Hi everyone, thanks for joining in today. I have Louise Mumford joining me and excited to have Louise back again. Louise has been our author for the day, so great to have you back again, Louise. Um, Lu-
Thank you.
Louise was born and lives in South Wales, and from a young age she loved books and dancing. She hated having to go to sleep. Convinced that she might miss out on something interesting happening in the world while she dozed off to her mother's frustration. So, insomnia has always been part of her life. And in her 15-year teaching career, she tried to pass on her love to reading to her students and discovered that the secret to successful teaching is stickers. She is aware that that is an essential bribery. In the summer of 2019, Louise experienced a once in a lifetime moment. She was discovered as a new writer by her publisher at the Prima Donna Festival. Everything has been a bit of a whirlwind since then. So Louise lives in Cardiff with her husband and spends her time trying to get down on paper all the marvellous and frightening things that happen in her head. Her debut book, Sleepless, a frighteningly inventive, speculative thriller, inspired by her own experience of insomnia, was published by HQ Digital in December 2020, and it's reached the overall top 50 UK Kindle chart and has recently been optioned for TV by a Californian production company. That must be really excited.
It is incredibly exciting. Yes. It doesn't mean it would get made
Yeah,
the way
but
it
at least it,
works.
yeah, at least
Yeah, it
someone's
means that
picked
they've
it
just got
up.
the option to do it for a
Mm,
year. Yes.
mm. So thanks so much, Louise, for joining us again. Just wondering if you want to start off by telling people a little bit about Sleep Plus.
Thank you. And thank you for having me, Jackie. And thank you to the book club as well, because it's a fantastic Facebook group as well. So much
Thanks.
amazing content in it. So my book, Sleepless, is inspired by my own insomnia. So I feel like I could write about that because obviously I have firsthand experience of it. So it's about a desperate insomniac called Thea. She's, I think, about 27 years old when the book starts. And she makes a foolish decision to take part in a sleep technology trial because she's reached the end of her tether by that point. She's involved in a car accident, and she feels like, she really needs to sort this out now. So she goes to a very British, deserted island where the sleep technology trial is taking place, and she soon discovers that the tech company do not wish to help her sleep, they wish to control her sleep. So it's a little bit, it's for fans of kind of John Mars or Black Mirror, which is on UK TV. I'm sure you have it as well.
And did you do some sleep testing yourself to,
No, actually, no, I've never gone to the sleep clinic. I did a lot of research into
yeah.
what happens when you go to those sleep clinics, and they're fantastic. There's a London sleep clinic, which is really, really good. I haven't actually gone to do that because there's a part of my brain that almost thinks if I actually do that, if I go and try to get that level of help, I've almost kind of sanctioned it. At the moment, it's my insomnia is something that I will deal with, I will cope with. It's a part of me. I don't want to make it a big thing. So no, I haven't actually reached that stage where I would need to go to the London Sleep Clinic. Very, very, very luckily, actually. But they do a fantastic job. I read so much about sleep as well, and sleep theory and sleep research. We know so little about what the brain does when it's asleep.
I remember when my daughter was maybe about 8 or 9, she went to a sleep clinic and all that, like it took them ages and ages to hook her up to everything. And
yeah, and then how you'd have a normal night's sleep.
I know, I don't even know how she could sleep like it. I remember after it took them like about, well, I don't know, it might be exaggerating, but half an hour or so to hook her all up. And then she said, oh, I have to go to the toilet now. So they had to unhook her all over again.
Yeah, and the thing with sleep as well is once you start having a couple of bad nights, it becomes a snake that eats its own tail. It starts to just it becomes psychological then as well. You have so many barriers trying to get back to any sort of sleep routine. But I do really feel for parents with children who can't sleep, because obviously that's just, I don't know how my mum coped with me, because I would be up for most of the night. I wouldn't really go to sleep until about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And she had jobs and, you know, another child and a house to run and, you know, all of those things. It must have been really hard.
Yeah. So when you're not sleeping, are you thinking about what you're writing about, or do you actually do some writing when you can't sleep?
Sometimes I have. I've got like most writers have got a notebook by the bed, so I always scribble in that as well. I will read. You try to do things that don't wake up your brain too much. So sometimes actually going off and doing some writing would wake me up to the point that I just wouldn't sleep for the rest of that night, then through the day and then into the next night. So I do try to do stuff that's kind of a little bit gentler. Reading, I find, works quite well now. It didn't when I was younger, but it does work pretty well now. I try not to watch television or go on my phone or anything like that, because I think that just wakes you up straight away. But yes, I do, you know, there have been times I've been very frustrated. I just thought, I'll just go on my computer and just write something, because at least my time is being used in some way.
And you said you did quite a lot of research about sleep. Is there something that you found that really surprised you that you could share with us?
Oh yes, actually, because this ties into the book a little bit. So they were talking about, I don't know, well, let's take you back to kind of the very basic idea of this. I don't know if you had this where you are, but we had back in the kind of 90s, early 2000s, we had a hypnotist over here called Paul McKenna.
Oh yes, he was on TV here as well. Yeah, I know.
And he used to do these CDs, which you were meant to put on during the night. They would play during the night, and you would be able to, apparently, you'd go to sleep and your subconscious would listen to this CD and you would magically give up smoking or lose weight or whatever it was that you were trying to do. And he made a killing in the 90s, I'm sure, with these CDs that people put on. I don't know if they massively worked. I don't think they did, because none of those things worked. So that was the original idea. But I learned then when reading, and it was called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. It's a fantastic book. I think it's by Penguin. It's amazing, amazingly researched. And actually it said that they're discovering now that if you were to do certain steps and then wake up at certain points in your sleep cycle, you could actually, in theory, learn some things quicker. So if certain information was kind of relayed to you at those certain points in your sleep pattern, you would remember them the next day. So there was, thinking back to Paul McKenna in the 90s, there was some sort of thinking behind it. It's just, obviously, it wouldn't work with just a CD playing. It would have to be very structured. And that just fascinated me, that you could actually train your brain a little bit more to be more receptive to learning. You could learn things faster. That's just quite fantastic.
And you didn't try any of that yourself to see if anything like that?
No, you've got to do it. You've got to, I mean, he didn't put it in the book, the exact steps, because everybody would have gone off to do that, I'm sure. So no, you couldn't have done it yourself. You have to take part in some sort of clinical trial to be able to do that.
And I've got quite a few people watching, which is really great. I might go through some of the questions that are coming here for you. There's a lot of comments about not being able to sleep properly. Wendy said she liked you loved reading as a child. She used to read by torchlight after lights out. And she wonders, at what time did you decide you wanted to write books?
Oh, I've always wanted to write books. I used to love the Anne of Green Gables stories when I was a child. Alec Montgomery, I loved all of Anne of Green Gables. So all of my early stories were always about plucky orphans overcoming things with slightly grouchy aunts and uncles. But I've always written. Yes, I wrote while I taught as well, as I taught for a long time. That was quite hard because the teaching day can often be fairly short, but everything you do around the teaching day takes quite a lot of time and energy. But I did write stuff still because there were stories in my head and I wanted to. So yes, I've always written. It just hasn't been perhaps maybe of a publishable quality up until this point.
And did you do something, like you said up until this point, did you do a course or something, or how did you reach the point, do you think, when you were able to write this book?
I didn't actually do any sort of courses. I did do a couple of writing weekends where you do workshops and things. I didn't actually take an MA course. Way back in my university years, I did creative writing as part of my degree. But looking back on it now, I think actually I didn't really know that those MA courses for creative writing existed. It's weird, isn't it? You don't know what you don't know, and I just didn't realise they were there. Not until I actually became an author, and suddenly I thought, oh, look at all these things that I could have done. So no, I didn't take that route. I think every book and badly written story that I'd written up until that point taught me a lot. And then it was obviously meeting my publisher at the festival, and she read the work that I'd got up to a certain standard and she gave me feedback, and that's what helped me improve that particular book then, which the feedback was just invaluable.
And are you still teaching now while you're writing?
I'm not. I gave up teaching a couple of years ago now to concentrate on writing, and I've got a business with my husband as well. Mostly partly to do with sleep, because you had to be in, obviously as a teacher, you have to be in very early it used to be before the lockdowns and pandemic, into the school building. So often I would be in school by about 7:45, and I really struggled to be able to function at that time. And actually the car crash that starts off the story is my car crash. Crashed my car quite spectacularly. And I'd been driving along thinking, this is brilliant, I haven't had much sleep, but I've done a whole school day, I can do this. And then I drove into the car in front of me, which I couldn't. So I was quite aware that I was getting older and I wasn't coping as well with that kind of living on adrenaline, getting me through the days. And I really wanted to write. I'd always said I wanted to write, and you get to a point, don't you? I was reaching, I think I was 38. So I was reaching my 40th birthday, and you just get to a point where you think, well, when are you going to do it? If you're not going to do it now, when? You're only getting older. So which is a privilege, by the way, to get older. That's amazing. But if there are things that you want to do, then you need to do them. And what sort of age children did you teach? I taught the hormonal years, the 11 to 16-year-olds. I really like them, actually. They are grumpy and hormonal, but they are also great fun. And I knew a lot more about popular culture when I was a teacher than I do now. They show you things and talk to you, and they're funny. They're so funny. And I had a real blast teaching them.
So apart from using stickers as encouragements and that, what would you say to a teenager who looked like they had potential or really enjoyed writing? And
well, I did actually. I remember one student of mine, he just decided he was going to write a book, and I used to read the chapters that he wrote. He used to do it about every week or so, and he'd hand them to me. And I think it's just being positive, isn't it? And not ever, and not within reason, obviously, not ever telling a child that they can't do something, because most children just want to hear that, actually whatever they want to do, if they give it a go, then they've certainly got a chance of achieving it. So to be realistic, but to also not shut off, certain careers for them. So I was just always interested. And also what my students came up with in terms of stories, sometimes, my imagination definitely wouldn't have gone there. So it is amazing to read their work. What I also said to, and it was boys in particular, who used to say, I don't read. There's no book that interests me. I always used to say, you just haven't found the book that interests you yet. So if you keep going, you will find the book that interests you. Don't give up, definitely. And my biggest achievements are when I found a book for those kind of reluctant readers and they really loved it. that was kind of that
Yeah,
made me feel
that would
the
be
best.
yeah, yeah. And Kelly says she loves the topic of your book, as she's someone who struggles with sleep as well. And the cover really grabs her. Do you want to lift up the cover again? I read on Kindle, so I usually have a book to show, but mine was on Kindle. She wonders if you had any say in the design of the cover.
Oh no. So because I'm with a traditional publisher, they're very
Mm,
kind. So we're working on
mm,
book 2 now, which we've just, I think, managed to nail a title for, and we're thinking of covers now. And they're brilliant because they go, here are the ideas that the design team have. And obviously, if you hate something, tell us. And, this is what we're thinking of. But in reality, there's a huge science that goes behind cover design and
mm,
titles.
mm,
It has to work as a book like this on a shelf, but like you just said, it also has to work on sometimes a very small e-reader screen
mm.
as well. The cover
On
still
the,
has to be
yeah.
clear,
Mm.
so and attractive as well. So I think I would prefer to let the experts do that. So when I first got the Sleepless cover, I was a little bit like, oh, that's perhaps not what I was thinking of. But
Yeah.
then I didn't know what I was thinking of originally.
Mm.
And now I've grown to love it. I actually do love how angry she looks. She looks quite
And
annoyed
is
on that
she
cover,
how
and I do
you
love that.
visualized? Is she how you visualized her? The face and
Yes,
yeah.
she is. They definitely they do read the book, and they do
Mm.
take notes from my editor as well. And she is exactly
Oh
how Thea.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great then, yeah. Mm. And Kelly's got an interesting question. She says, do you think writing or being a teacher is easier?
Oh, that is a good question. I think writing is easier because I'm in control of my day mostly, so I can start a little bit later than I used to get into school, like I said, about 7:45. And my
Mm.
form class, my registration class, always you basically not talk to me for about 3/4 of an hour while I woke up. So don't give me
Because
any
they knew you.
questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask me things. Just leave me to drink my
Mm.
coffee, and then I'll be with you in about half an hour. So in that way it's easier. I think I miss the social side of teaching, the
Mm.
kind of being surrounded by people. I was always, your classroom was always busy, and the staff room was always busy, and you had your colleagues, and your team of your classes, because they were like little teams.
Mm.
And I do miss that because you're on your own quite a lot writing, and I have struggled, and lockdown and the pandemic probably hasn't helped that because everyone's been stuck inside, haven't they, a
Yeah.
lot during that time. But I think writing is definitely easier because it's what I've always wanted to do, and I enjoy it. And I think if you
Mm.
sit down, and I enjoyed parts of teaching, but I didn't enjoy the paperwork side,
Yeah.
and the
Mm.
spreadsheets and the constant
Mm.
ranking of students and all of that
Mm.
sort of stuff. So to actually sit down and do something that you do really, really love is a privilege.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm interested to know, as you probably know, our book club is global, but over half of our members are in Australia, and we do interview a lot of Australian authors. And one thing, coming from myself outside of the industry, and that I was quite surprised with a lot of Australian authors saying how tight the author community is and how supportive they are of each other. Do you experience that where you are as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've actually met another writer who hasn't been
Mm,
lovely and open and generous and, just wants you to succeed. I'm actually part of a closed Facebook group, which
mm,
is the authors who got their first book published in 2020, which is
mm,
when the world first started to fall apart with the
mm,
pandemic. And that has just been the most supportive group. We've swapped like knowledge and what we've learned, and
mm,
we ask each other for help in terms of titles. I can't think of a title for my book, or somebody is doing something and they need people to retweet it, or share it on Facebook or whatever it is. And being part of those groups has just been a lifeline, really, because I haven't been able to, during the pandemic, I wasn't able to go and meet readers physically because there were no festivals. I wasn't able to go to a physical writing circle or anything like that. So to have those Facebook groups is amazing. And all the writers, that, like I say, I don't think I've actually met a writer who hasn't been supportive.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah. And what about promoting your book now? Have you been able to go out and promote it a bit more now?
Yes, I have a little bit. The literary festivals here in the UK have started up in real life. Some of them are hybrids. They do real life events, but they also do online stuff. And actually, I think keeping some sort of online presence is quite important because it includes a whole section of the audience who were perhaps a bit excluded from those festivals in the past, who maybe couldn't get there because of time or money or disability or whatever it is. I think, and also those authors who couldn't get to those festivals because of disability or time or money or whatever it was. I just think it's so much more inclusive if there's an online presence as well. But the literary festivals I've gone to have been incredibly well run, very kind of COVID aware and COVID safe. So I think people are starting to feel a bit safer going back to those kind of events, which is good to see.
No, that's good to hear. And Kelly wonders what's been the favourite part of your writing journey so far?
Oh, that's a good. There's been lots of favourite parts of my writing journey. Actually, holding the book in your hand, that's quite a moment, and putting it on a shelf like a real book with all the other real books that exist, that's amazing. But I think probably the bit that sticks out for me is it was December 2020 when the book came out. So in the UK, that was our third lockdown. And we'd just been told that pretty much Christmas was cancelled. We thought we might have some sort of Christmas. No, we were not having any kind of Christmas. We were all stuck in the house and we couldn't see anyone else. So it was pretty grim. And I did an online launch through Facebook, actually, through my author page. And it was just really, really good fun. I didn't really know what I was doing because I'd never done an online launch before. So it was just me sat here with a tiara on and amazing huge earrings with champagne. And I did quizzes and I showed them around my office and they all had questions. And it was such a laugh. I honestly had so much fun. My husband came in and kind of left me little notes that were really funny. And yeah, so that's what sticks in my head. It's kind of weirdly, it is the online community and the warmth and the love from that online community that's really stuck with me. The readers, it's the readers.
And I've got another question from Kelly. I have to say, Kelly, thanks. You've got some really, really great questions tonight. Thanks, Kelly. Kelly wonders if COVID had a positive or negative impact on your writing.
Oh, on my writing. Well, I think it definitely forced me to actually sit at my desk and do the writing, but there wasn't anything more exciting going on outside. I didn't struggle to write. I know some author friends who did struggle to write, partly through just kind of mental attitude, that everything got a bit grim during the pandemic. Other writers, because they had a lot of family commitments, they were homeschooling, they were trying to do their day job, as well as fit in writing, and just all of that in the house was just too much and they couldn't think. I was quite lucky that for me, it was really, really great to be able to just go into this other world in my head, because the world outside was a bit dull and a bit grim, and I could escape basically into my imaginary world with my imaginary characters who didn't have COVID. I haven't written about COVID yet. I don't know what we do as authors. We're going to have to start mentioning it in books pretty soon because it's not going anywhere, COVID. So we are going to mention it, I think. But the general advice is not to write about COVID. At the moment, a lot of editors and agents are saying, readers not really that interested in reading about COVID. I'm not so sure about that, because I think there are lots of interesting situations that came up because of COVID, lots of things that wouldn't normally have happened.
Yeah.
But so I'm not sure. I guess the readers will lead us there. The books that have come out, I think I'm not sure if you have it over here, but there's 56 Days by Catherine Howard, I think it's called, and that's set during lockdown, and that's done really well. So who knows?
Okay. Yeah. And we're interested to know that. What are you working on at the moment?
So I am in the middle of, they're called structural edits of book 2. So I've written book 2 and it has gone to my editor, and my editor has read it and given me about 5 or 6 sides of A4 of the things that I need to think about. And it's a collaborative process. So she never tells me how to fix those things. She just kind of highlights the things that aren't working. And then I go away and I think, how I can make that better. And actually, I really love that part, because first of all, you've got a reader's point of view, an experienced reader's point of view. So you can actually see what works and what isn't working in the book. And then you can put in the work to fix it. So I really like doing that. So that's what I'm doing right now. But I am also at the same time I did start book 3, but that's gone on the back burner a bit while I concentrate again on book 2. So I'm always writing something.
And would you say it's quite different from Sleepless, or similar, or?
So book 2 is about a mum and a daughter again, because in Sleepless there's Thea who goes to the island, but there's also her mum back on the mainland, and they have quite a fun relationship. Her mum is kind of a lighter character. She brings a bit of fun and mischief to the novel. So my next book is concentrated on a mother and daughter as well, but this is a much more toxic relationship. Okay. And it is about a mum who has taken her daughter, and they've hidden away from the world. Okay. For quite a few years. And it's what happens when the world comes knocking, literally when the world comes knocking, and what happens then. So it has been different, because it's not really futuristic. There isn't any futuristic element to it. But it is, I do quite like taking characters and putting them in quite confined spaces. So the island in Sleepless, you can't escape from the island. And here you've got quite a confined space, because they've been in the same place for so long. So I do like seeing how characters react to that.
And still a bit of a thriller.
Oh yes, it is still a thriller. Yes, definitely. I do. I just like taking readers on that kind of roller coaster, isn't it? Where you're hiding little bits, and then you suddenly, and then the reader thinks it's going one way, and then it veers off. I do love all of that, and it's very clever when you can do it well. The writers who do it well just are fantastic at it, and I think it's a real skill.
Yeah. Well, going back to whether we put COVID in books or not, Kim said it would be good to have some COVID situations and stories, as it's part of our history, but I think we often read to escape the reality of life, which is totally true.
I think that's true. I think as authors, we definitely start mentioning. I was watching something last night that just mentioned it really casually, and I thought, oh yeah, that's quite a good way to do it. Oh, it was You, the series 3 of You on Netflix.
I'll have to watch.
And very casually, they just said something about the pandemic, and it's like, oh yeah, you are acknowledging that. So I think writers will obviously acknowledge it. I think it'll be interesting to see which books that actually focus on it and take it as the main theme, which ones of those do well.
And Kelly wonders if there's been any author that's influenced your writing.
Apart from L.M. Montgomery, obviously, when I was 10. Any writers who have really... Do you know who I really liked when I was teaching? And I'm sure you've read this over in Australia as well. I was just trying to remember the author then. It's Louise Sasha, he wrote Holes. It's a young adult book, and it was made into a Disney film as well. And it's about this detention camp, almost like a juvenile prison. But the boys, it is all boys, isn't it? Yeah, they're all boys, and they dig these holes in the desert. That's all they do. And there's a whole, story as to why they're digging the holes eventually. But the writing his writing is just amazing because he sets a scene, but he does it in just a couple of sentences. It's not a huge page of, scenes describing a cafe or, describing a person. He does it so brilliantly, so incisively. The writing is just fantastic. And I always used to love teaching that book because the writing was so good. And the pupils loved the book as well, and the film is very good. To be fair to Disney, they did a really good job on the film. It's got Sigourney Weaver in it actually as the I can't remember what she's called now, the boss of the detention camp. She's given a title, but I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, that was a great movie, and quite a few people have said that they've read both the book and the movie and loved it. I'm wondering if you want to tell us a little bit more about how you first got published. Like we mentioned about the festival and that, I'd be interested to hear some more about how that worked. And
yeah, it's so I wrote the book. I wrote Sleepless in probably about 3 months to get a first draft together, which is quite quick.
It's quite fast,
and it is pretty quick. And I then started to send it out to agents because, and I'm sure it's the same again. In the UK, you send it to agents, and then agents will send it on to the traditional publishers if you wish to be traditionally published. And I don't mind. I still don't mind now if I'm traditionally published, or if I go with a small indie press, or if it's self-published at some point down the road. But I wanted to start with traditional publishing, see if I could get that route, and then work through the others. And what I did was I sent the book out far too early. It needed more work on it. So it got roundly rejected, which it deserved because it wasn't ready at that point. And so I worked on it some more. And I decided to go to a couple of literary festivals because this was 2019, so it was before the pandemic. And it was the last round of real life literary festivals. And there was a brilliant festival called the Prima Donna Festival, which happens in Suffolk. And it has been created by a group of influential women in kind of business and media and the literary world. And they wanted to create a festival where it was really inclusive, where the authors didn't kind of disappear behind a VIP curtain after their panel and were never seen again, that aspiring writers could actually talk to people and get advice and help. And there were workshops. And one of the workshops was held by the executive publisher of HQ, which is a part of HarperCollins. And what happened was that not many people turned up to the workshop. So it was just me, first of all.
Really? Wow.
And she said, well, what I'll do is I'll do one-to-ones then. You could just tell me about your book and what you're writing. And luckily I had my first 3 chapters with me and a synopsis and the elevator pitch as a A4 document. So I could just give the A4 document to her, and we talked about it, and then she went away and read it and asked for the full draft. So without finding the festival first, but also without having that document with me, so many chances could have slipped by. It's the fact that I had the first 3 chapters and I had, the elevator pitch. And I mean, the fact that she read the whole thing and then gave me this detailed structural edit and told me how to go in and improve it, and then they would think about publishing it. It was just amazing and scary because I had to go away and do that, and hope that it was good enough. But it was, and now I've got the 2-book contract. So
no, that's a great story. Kelly wonders if you plot all the twists before you start writing. No.
I know people who are very, very organized and they plan the whole book out before they write it. And I can definitely see that is sensible because you know where your story is going. And in a way, I wish I was that person. But I have tried to plan and do it that way before I write it. And it doesn't work. I can't get a story anyway because I don't know the characters well enough. It's when I start writing that I get to know the characters and I get to know the setting, and then the story starts to unfold. So I can't really do it beforehand. And I'm quite lucky that my brain just does seem to work, and it does seem to put the twists and the turns in. However, afterwards I have to do obviously quite a lot of work to it to make it all fit, and to make sure that, you know, everything works from the start up until that end point. And then what I do is I do almost planning in reverse. So then I put the whole story up on a board, and then I look at it and check that it's all working, but it's not something that I've planned out before I've written it. It's what I've already written, and I'm looking to see if it works, and then I will often rewrite it if it doesn't work. But I do wish I could plan, because it would make life easier.
So you don't know the ending when you start?
No, I have a rough idea sometimes of a final scene, or a rough idea of what I'm aiming for, but often the end will change as well. The end on the second book, I don't think I had an end in sight, actually. It got quite scary to one point, because I wasn't quite sure I was going to end. It's going to be continually writing book 2, but it did appear then. So there's a lot of trust. If you're not a planner, you've got to really kind of trust yourself that you are going to get there, and that does get a bit scary after a while.
And what do you like to read yourself? And wondering if there's anything you might have read lately that you could recommend to us.
What is the book that I'm reading actually right now? I am reading a book called Wilderness, and it's by, I think her author name is B.E. Jones. And it's been greenlit to be a Amazon Prime series, so it's actually going into filming very soon, and it's set in, and the reason I'm reading it is because I went on this holiday. It's set in the San Francisco Yosemite Valley, the sequoia trees, all of that kind of loop, which I did in a camper van with my husband, and I loved that landscape and that traveling. And what she's done very cleverly is weave a thriller into all of that. And it's really good. I haven't finished it yet, but I always want, I was talking about books with my friends. I always want to read the book before I watch the television.
Like
there's that kind of purist in me that just wants to read the book first before I watch the TV thing. Because I always think I mean, TV adaptations do amazing work. They're fantastic, but you never get that insight into the character that you do from an actual book.
I totally agree with that as well. And I'm just wondering, for you, what would you think a successful writer is?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it depends on what that writer wants as their success. So for some writers,
for yourself, I'm meaning.
For me, for me, I think I want as many readers as possible to read my book. So I like that dialogue between the kind of author and the reader. I like lots of people reading it and having opinions, and you know, sometimes those opinions maybe is that they didn't like the book, and that's fine. Nobody likes everything, and that's not how the world works. So yes, I do definitely want to sell lots of books. I want because that means lots of readers are reading the book. But I think for me, success also looks like giving back a bit of that support that I've received from authors to get to this point. So it's about, you know, being part of Facebook groups that are for authors and for writing circles and reading things. And, you know, if I know somebody who is an editor and looking for work, and there's somebody who needs something edited, it's about connecting people, isn't it, as well? So it's about being an active and enthusiastic and generous member of the writing community as well, because I think you only have a long career in writing if you are part of that wider community. I think the idea of just being on your own in an attic somewhere writing your books, very isolated, that doesn't work nowadays. I think you've got to give back as much as you get.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And could you tell us if you have any writing rituals?
No,
No.
no. I wish I did, because you know, it would kind of get your mind into it, wouldn't it? But no, I kind of just stumble to my desk and sit there for a while and like stare at the
Yeah.
screen and then start writing. I do have, they're not rituals, but I do have my little desk
Oh, cute.
buddies. So the light is quite bright there, but you've got the little Care Bears. So
Yeah.
I do have quite a few of those scattered
cute.
around my desk, and they're kind of like my colleagues. I remember telling you, don't I, that I don't have any people around me anymore. So it's almost as if these are my colleagues now. I
Yeah.
kind of have a little chat to them and go, "That's not working, is it? That's a rubbish chapter. I should really rewrite that." And they go, "Yes, yes, you should." So no, I don't have routines really. I just have a lot of small plastic creatures.
Do you have a favourite time to write?
I seem to find that it's from about 10 or 11 in the morning to about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I don't think I can write all day. I think my brain just stops working really. It doesn't continue for longer than that. So I might be thinking about it before I start writing, and I might be quickly jotting down afterwards what's going to happen next after I finish. But I think it's that kind of middle chunk of the day that seems to work pretty well at the moment. But that could change.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. It's been great chatting to you, and really happy that you came back again. And thanks to everyone who joined in. We had some really great questions, and looking forward to hearing about your next book, and maybe we might have a chance to talk to you again.
Be lovely. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it, and you've been a lovely host as well.
Thank you.
It's been a total joy.
And do you want to let people know before we go how they can keep in touch with you?
Oh, I have a website, so that's louisemumfordauthor.com, but I'm also on Facebook. You can find me at Louise Mumford Author. That's my author page. I'm on Twitter. I'm everywhere basically, which is Louise_Mumford. That's me on Twitter. And I'm also on Instagram, Louise Mumford Author, on Instagram as well. So I'm everywhere. And I think probably I'm most active on Twitter and Facebook. I love Twitter in particular, but I love hearing from readers. So come and say hi, and I will always say hi back. Yeah. And you might get a picture of a Care Bear.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks everybody. Bye.